Welcome to hour number 3, live right here on this first Saturday in October. It is week number 6 on College Football Today. He is Joe Lisi. He is Kevin Walsh. I am Ben Stevens. Kev, during Ben's top 10 and really just looking at the AP top 25 as a whole, not a lot of love for the Big 12. Is it correct as we focus on some Big 12 battles to start off this third and final hour? And we start in Ames, where Iowa State remains unbeaten. The Cyclones, 11.5-point favorite, Kev, against Baylor. 45.5 is that total. The Cyclones, one of the 5 best scoring defenses in college football. For Dave Aranda and the Bears, they get beat on a Hail Mary in Boulder 2 weeks ago. All right, bounce back in Waco against the vampires that are the BYU Cougars. They got routed early, unable to muster up a comeback. How important is this game today in Ames?
So, for Iowa State, it's really important. I'm sure many of you seen they come out pretty weekly. If the playoff began today, and consistently now this week, we've seen the Iowa State Cyclones having the bye and being the 4th team in that playoff.
Yep.
And I don't know how many of you out there take the time, but I just, exercise. All right, I think constantly just move right past Iowa State, right? Like, all right, they're going to get beat by whomever that 5th seed is, assuming they beat the 12th seed kind of situation. One of the ways, though, that Iowa State, I think, can change that perception is Rocco Becht hitting the next level. Rocco Becht, as a freshman, was excellent, averaging 8.5 yards per pass attempt. So far, through 4 weeks, it's about 8.4, which is good. You want improvement year over year. And that's what I look at with Iowa State this season is offensively, they look like a team that if they do win the Big 12, when they play in the second round of the CFP, is going to get steamrolled here. And I think Beck could break out because Baylor's defense is bad. Dave Aranda is not on a hot seat. Dave Aranda is fired. It's just a matter of when they announce that. That's how bad it's gone for, I think, here in Waco. I don't see any saving of it. Beck breakout is how I would look for this game.
Yeah, BYU attacked them over the top. I mean, especially with the passing attack. I think from the spread perspective, I sort of lean to Baylor in a bounce-back spot to keep it close. They've won 3 of the last 5 in regards to the series. So typically, even though the game is in Ames, I lean to the Bears with Sawyer Robertson to maybe make it a game. Lean to the over as well in regards to the matchup. To Kevin's point, I mean, they blew right through that total with BYU last week in regards to almost 60 points, right? So, again, Aranda's gone. We know that. I just think in this particular spot, this is an opportunity where it's 12, 11.5. I like the Bears. Everybody was on the Bears last week against BYU. Nobody's on them. A somewhat rivalry game. I'll take Baylor with the points.
Jador Sanders 2 weeks ago against Baylor threw for more than 340 yards. If Rocco Becht does have that breakout, keep an eye on 2 of his top targets that are as good as you will see in the Big 12. Jalen Knoll and Jaden Higgins. Jalen Knoll, the lesser of the 2 receiving yards props today at 54.5. Iowa State consistent on the defensive side of the football. Off to the best start in program history, at least in the last 2 decades. And a perfect 3-0 against the spread against FBS competition. Kev, you said this during Ben's Top 10. When you look at the AP poll, 16 through 20, 4 of those 5 schools from the Big 12 and Oklahoma now an SEC program. Iowa State is the Big 12 title favorite. Iowa State is the highest-ranked team in the AP Top 25, checking in at 16th nationally. But how about a couple of teams that are unbeaten in Big 12 play? The Arizona Kansas State game was not a Big 12 game, despite what you might think. So Arizona off to a 1-0 start. Texas Tech off to a 2-0 start. Arizona winning outright last week against Utah. Sans Cam rising. 6.5-point spread in Tucson in favor of the Cats against the Red Raiders. Again, the significance of this game in the Big 12 title race cannot be lost. How do you see it playing out?
I want to harp on something here. Within Ben's Top 10, we got to it. And you dropped Utah out. You did a great job with that, right?
Thanks.
This is why I think the AP ranking is fun, but it would be really good if the CFP unveiling, like March Madness, only came out when the season was over. Because truly, and I know that I'm hard on Utah, but this isn't about that. It's about Utah's 18th right now, solely because they were 10th heading into last week. If you look, Arizona's win at Utah is better than anything Utah's done. They lost the head-to-head matchup, and Arizona's loss being at Kansas State is not some massive indictment. The Wildcats have the same record as Utah sitting right now. Or they're 3-1, right? So they played one less football game. But again, that's not why Utah is up there, because they beat Southern Utah.
Right.
That, to me, is one of the dangers, I really believe, of the CFP unveiling coming earlier than it needs to, Ben, because, again, legitimately, if I sat down every voter, I said, explain to me Utah being there. Well, they were 10th last week. You want me to unrank them? Yes, I do. But people don't like making those drastic week-to-week changes. Like, I will tell you this, Lisa. You mentioned Texas Tech. Like, they're so far up against the 8-ball now, they've been given no consideration. They win a game here against Arizona. They won't get accurate credit for it because Arizona's not ranked when they should be ranked. And I know they're 26th. Well, 27th, right, because we have 225. I know they're 27th, but that little number will matter more in the big picture. Now, this is an 11 o'clock, dead slate, off-card, nobody-pay-attention game when it's a really important game in the Big 12.
It really is. And I think that'll catch up, obviously, from weeks 8 to 12 in regards to, especially if one of these teams are undefeated. It's a great game, and you get great quarterback play. Brennan Morton playing well, and obviously Noah Fafita. I will say, when you look at the transition this year with Noah Fafita with Jed Fish last year, 72% completion percentage. This year, 63. He has an interception in every game this year.
Yeah.
They grinded out another victory against Utah. To me, Texas Tech is a different team when Taj Brooks is in that lineup. When he's out of that lineup, that's the game they lost against Washington State, completely one-dimensional. When he's in there, they're a different animal. Again, I want the points here. I know I'm partial. I picked them to win the Big 12. I'm not backing down now. Arizona giving up $150 on the ground. I'll roll the dice. I think they win the ball game outright.
Tech, I have been critical of this year under Joey McGuire. They are 4-1 straight up, but just 2-3 against the number, favored in all 5 games. Now, an underdog for the first time this year in the Joey McGuire era in Lubbock, which dates back to 2022, 6-5 against the spread. Arizona has not covered in either of its 2 games as the favorite this year, but they were laying 28 or more in their opening 2 games of the season, 5-2 ATS a year ago. Noah Fafita got off to such a strong start. Tetaroa McMillan, more than 300 receiving yards as well. Last week against Utah, only $197. He's got 3 touchdowns in his last 3 games, does Fafita. He threw for 4 in week 1. T-Mac last week, only 50 receiving yards against the Utes, but still has 503 of the overall 1,060 passing yards that Noah Fafita has had this season. That's more than 47%. Joe, to your point on Taj Brooks, at least 109 yards in all 4 games this year, has only played in 4 games, and yet is the 6th leading rusher in college football. Here's a game where we thought maybe 2 teams could contend for a Big 12 title. Probably not going to happen. Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game a season ago, Lisi, they're 0-2 against the number in Big 12 play. They were 6-4 ATS last year in Big 12 action. To try to stay in title contention, they got drubbed last week in the Little Apple by K-State. They're laying 2.5 at home today in Stillwater against Garrett Green and West Virginia. What do you like in this matchup?
I lean Oak State. They've dominated the series, won 8 of the last 9, won by 14 points per game. The reason why I can't go all in, Alan Bowman over the past couple of weeks, 47% completion percentage. That's atrocious. Why don't they run Ollie? I mean, team was predicated on rushing the football. They don't have 1 game over 200 yards. Last year they had 3, just to give you an odds on. I lean to Oklahoma State, but don't love it.
Mike Gundy has been so bad this year, and I know it won't be the case, but he should be on the hot seat. They returned about as much as any talent in all of college football on a team that was in the Big 12 championship game, saw Texas and Oklahoma leave, and they are left for dead 2 weeks into the Big 12 season. It is beyond pathetic what they've done.
The Pokes, the worst total in rushing defense in the Big 12. We'll talk Heisman Trophy next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the 1. Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant for that amount of money.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
What a compelling Heisman Trophy race we have here in 2024 after the opening month of this college football season, now entering October. Alabama's quarterback, Jalen Milroe, is the favorite after a phenomenal performance last week against Georgia. More than 370 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 117 on the ground, multiple rushing scores. He is the only player in Alabama history to have multiple passing touchdowns and multiple rushing touchdowns in 3, now make it 4 consecutive games. So let's start at the top, but you will see the top 5, and it is very interesting. Jalen Milroe, the favorite, but the second best price is not a quarterback. It's a man that does it all. Travis Hunter, plus 350. 5th most receiving yards nationally in college football. And oh, by the way, he's an outstanding cornerback as well. Cam Ward, still there statistically, no doubt about it, at 6-1. And Miami is off to a 5-0 start. There you see Ashton Genty at plus 750, and Nico Iamaleava rounds out the top 5 at 12-1. I do want to start with Jalen Milroe, then we'll talk the rest of the top 5, especially, Kev, with our attention on the non-QBs. But Jalen Milroe is the Heisman Trophy favorite. Only one Alabama quarterback has ever won the Heisman Trophy. That was Bryce Young in 2021. Can Jalen Milroe make history this year?
100%. I mean, again, he couldn't be off to a better start. It's not just the win over Georgia. It's the numbers all to back it up, because we know that the numbers are still important. 18 total touchdowns. You mentioned the 2-2 in every single game, but yardage as well. I mean, he threw for 374 in that football game against Georgia. Nearly 500 yards of offense for Jalen Milroe. The worry I have with Milroe, and I'm going to make this case on all this entire top group here, is I do not think Alabama is going to go unbeaten. I really don't. Kalen DeBoer, off of a bye, has been brilliant. I still think at Tennessee, I think at LSU, I think the Iron Bowl, I think there are games on this schedule where they are going to lose. And in a loss, how does Jalen Milroe look, and what does that do to the number? He's the rightful favorite, but I wouldn't bet it at the number.
I have it at a 10-1 number, so I'm feeling pretty good, but still a very difficult slate for Alabama. Kev, you made the point that maybe Alabama is not undefeated. Do you believe there is a team with a Heisman Trophy frontrunner that could end the year unbeaten?
So I ultimately don't think we're going to get unbeaten anywhere at the power level. I think that the Big Ten, Joe, and the SEC are all too talented there. So that to me, it means that we're going to get a lot of opportunities to dive back in and bet guys off of losses because there will be some overreactions, and it also means we should be cautious betting guys after their best moments.
Yeah, and I think the one player that maybe will stay in the top three is Travis Hunter because of the versatility, because of the Ironman aspect, and if he continues to just wow in Colorado, win games, and be in contention for a Big 12 championship, keep an eye out for that. But to Kevin's point, when you look at the top, yes, I agree. I don't think Alabama will be undefeated. Does that mean that opens the door for Beck or anybody else in regards to the SEC, yours for that matter? I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
I think it would open the door, and we have to keep an eye out on how these games play today. But Cade Klubnik, and I'm just saying, he's trending now.
For sure.
All of a sudden, his worst game came week 1 against Georgia. Maybe it's a different team. Only time will tell.
Right.
If they dominate Florida State, they get to the ACC championship game, and he's got 35-plus touchdowns at 25-1. That's great value to me.
And that's kind of where we are in the current climate of college football. We don't need an undefeated team to have that Heisman Trophy winner. With the expansion of the college football playoff, Clemson's season is not done despite the dismal start to their year against Georgia. In fact, it's rejuvenated. 13 total touchdowns for Cade Klubnik in the last 3 games for the Tigers. So let's have, as we have often said, the sample size. It's often a quarterback. It's a team that gets at least to a conference championship or into the college football playoff. What is the threshold of a non-quarterback to win the Heisman Trophy? Last on QB to do it, Devontae Smith, the wide receiver at Alabama in 2020. The last running back to do it, also at Alabama, that was Derrick Henry in 2015. Joe, you can start either way. Travis Hunter, Ashton Genty, who has a more realistic path to a Heisman Trophy.
Well, I want to say Genty just because we haven't seen a running back in the mix at all, right, outside of Derrick Henry. But Travis Hunter is such a special situation. We might not see it for the next 50 years in regards to that situation. But, I brought it up with Kevin, too, in regards to running backs. We saw Jonathan Taylor, 2,000 yards, 5 years ago? He came in third in regards to the running. But if Genty rushes for 2,300, 2,400 yards, has multiple touchdowns, you got to – I would probably bet that. I'll just throw another guy out, Caleb Johnson, just because they play Ohio State today and his body of work up until this point, maybe he goes from 130 to 50.
Yeah, Caleb Johnson dead the rights when they lose today to Ohio State.
I'm just saying.
No, that's fine. We can both just say it. Here's my thing with Hunter.
Yeah.
So who he is remarkable, no doubt. But I think, and his case is wrapped in the both sides of the ball, right? But it is also wrapped in the winning. He would not have these odds if they were sat here 2-3. It is the fact that they beat Baylor in incredible fashion at overtime with his incredible play on the goal line defensively. It is the fact that they abused UCF. I still do not know, because this is the number people keep throwing out there. 8 wins. Which, by the way, their updated win total is 6.5. Juiced over, but the books aren't even ready to say they're an 8-win team.
Yeah.
I do not know what happens if next week when they host Kansas State, they lose outright to his number. My thing with Ashton Genty and why those two is much more tempting to me. Travis Hunter, while that's 1 of 1, it then almost throws off where we don't have comp points. Ashton Genty's comparison is Barry Sanders. That's what the projections are. Yep. It's 2,500 rushing yards. It's 39 rushing touchdowns. Now, Barry did it in 11 games. Genty, you're talking, that's a 12-game sample. Genty might play 13 games with a Mountain West title game there.
Correct.
If Ashton Genty rewrites the college record book, then, and again, considering what he did against Oregon, despite that being a loss, they're 12-1 Mountain West champions in the CFP. He's got, to me, a much better chance.
On pace for more than 2,500 yards in 39 touchdowns. Derrick Henry, the last running back to win it, did it with 2,200 yards. We'll talk more on CFT next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena.
This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the one. Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant for that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We talk about some ranked teams in action on this first Saturday in October, looking for a bounce-back spot, still with compelling cases in attempts to contend for a conference crown. We start in the SEC. Ole Miss on the road against South Carolina. Both of these teams have played Kentucky. South Carolina hammered the Cats in Lexington. The Red and Rebs lost to the Cats at home in the Grove in Oxford. This, to me, Joe, one of the more compelling stories of this Saturday is Ole Miss an aberration. Weak schedule to start, got beat by an SEC foe. They will never see the ceiling this year under Lane Kiffin. Or are the Rebels a true conference contender, or at least a CFP outlook still up for grabs for this Ole Miss team? They're a 9.5-point favorite today in Columbia against South Carolina. The Gamecocks coming off a bye. South Carolina an underdog once again in SEC play for their third consecutive game to open up conference action. They're a perfect 2-0 against the spread with an outright victory as a dog as well. How do you see this game playing out today at Williams-Brice?
I think it's a bounce-back spot for Ole Miss. Again, big picture, I still think Ole Miss from an offensive perspective can make some noise in the SEC, and I still think they have an outside chance to make the college football playoff. But again, defense needs to get much more physical and much better in run support. You saw Kentucky push them around, and you can make the argument maybe Kentucky a little bit better than what we expected going toe-to-toe in the trenches with Georgia and Ole Miss respectively. But again, I think this is Jackson Dart just going up against, in my opinion, still a handcuff offense in South Carolina. I know they got Rocket Sanders. I know they can run it, but I just think the speed of Ole Miss is the difference. Laying 9.5, I think they win this ball game fairly comfortable. I know they stepped up against LSU at home. I think LSU's Ole Miss dominates by double digits.
So I'm fascinated today to see how, if Kiffin perceived a loss to Kentucky, similar to me, where he ran the ball a little too much. Because Henry Parrish is questionable heading into this game and averaged around 4 yards per carry against, or 4.8 yards, which is not bad. Yeah. But Dart was still nearly 10 yards per pass attempt, and that was the worst game he's had in that category. And again, the Kentucky defense is very good. The fact that Dart was still around 10, the fact that they had 27 pass attempts, I know the 29 is a little misleading because Dart has 13 of those, 4 of those are sacks, but still, I wonder if today they go into South Carolina and say, you know what, Jackson, rip it. and let it fly, his number's 284.5. I'm looking at this at 400-plus passing yards at 10-1. Let's not forget how Jackson started this year.
Yeah.
418, 377, 377, and 382. And those first 4 games, he didn't really need to throw in any of them. If South Carolina can trade, whose offense has played well so far this season, and Dart throws the ball 40 times for the first time this season, I think you can cash a really big ticket.
They slightly outgained Kentucky last week, and the Cats are the worst offense in the SEC. Still the best total offense in the country is Ole Miss at better than 607 yards per game and the best rushing defense. Quarterback questions for the Cox after the bye. Is it Lenora Sellers, the talented freshman? Promising, but still listed as questionable according to Shane Beamer. In their last game against Akron, Robbie Ashford was great. 243 through the air, 2 passing touchdowns, $133 on the ground, and a score as well. Now let's get to ACC territory for Louisville and SMU. The Cards last week, of course, in South Bend, were beat by Notre Dame. But that wasn't an ACC game. This is the ACC opener for Louisville, booked as a favorite once again. Kev at home laying 6.5 against SMU, and Louisville's 3-0 against the number as a favorite this year. How do you see this game playing out?
I look towards SMU in this game. All of a sudden, Kevin Jennings comes in, and the Mustangs look like the team they were supposed to look like preseason. I was very hard on them with that loss to Nevada. Then the loss to BYU, I felt that my perception of them preseason was spot on, that they were completely overvalued. But the wins against TCU and FSU just make me wonder, have they now found the appropriate quarterback here? And 7 just looks a little tall for me, Joe. I'd lean Stangs.
See, I lean Louisville because I think they're going to be able to run it, and I think that front 7 did a pretty good job against Notre Dame and that offensive line. They didn't give up a lot. Right. They're still allowing less than 3 yards per carry. Get Jennings into long third downs. I would lay the 7 with Louisville. 2
of 24 teams allowing less than 100 yards on the ground, just 3.8 yards per pop for Notre Dame last week. Not the ACC opener, by the way, for the Cards. They did get a win against Georgia Tech, 5-5 against the spread in ACC action a year ago. SMU has won 2 straight since the bad loss to BYU. Our betting cards for Week 6 next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the 1. Obviously, Terrence Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant for that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
The opening Saturday in October, it's Week 6, live right here on College Football Today on SportsGrid. And now time for the betting cards. The picks as we see them, and with games starting in just about 30 minutes, we got to fire through. Lisi, some of your early bets on the card for week number 6.
Typically, I don't lay 4 touchdowns, but I'm willing to do that with Penn State. I know they didn't cover against Illinois. I liked Illinois in that matchup. UCLA been a covering machine, got the cover, against Oregon. But 2 things I don't like: early kick coming West Coast to the East Coast. Second, that third down defense for UCLA, atrocious. Drew Aller, I think, has a big day. 212.5 is his number. I think they run it, they throw it, they make a statement and cover the 28.5. I'm laying it with Penn State, one of my better picks for the day. Texas A&M. The fact that the game is at home is the main reason why I'm backing into Marcel Reed and Elko. If they were on the road, I might have a different assessment, but I think they can throw the football. Also, like Marcel Reed's athleticism coupled with Le'Veon Moss, that secondary bend for Texas A&M, holding opposing offenses, 57% completions. They forced 7 interceptions. That's a great recipe to have at home. That's why I'm laying it with the Aggies.
It is really interesting, and we'll get to our games of the week to end out the show right before the games start. That one, the only ranked versus ranked matchup that we have. It's 9th-ranked Mizzou on the road at Kyle Field against number 25, Texas A&M. Laying less than a field goal at home in College Station. I like to look at Le'Veon Moss as well, who has been a great compliment to the young freshman quarterback Marcel Reed. I am telling you, Mike Elko and Colin Klein, do not confuse things or make it difficult. Do not start Connor Wigman. Keep trusting the freshman. He has played clean football. I've got one bet at noon, so I'll give it to you. Army and Tulsa, over 50.5. The Black Knights have been an offensive juggernaut throughout this season. The best rushing offense in the country at better than 371 yards per game. They have also covered the spread in all 4 of their victories this year, over in 3 of 4. They were a pick'em slight favorite against FAU, so every game they have laid at least 2 points, as they are today against the Golden Hurricanes. They have gone over in their 3 true games as a favorite. In Tulsa, second worst scoring defense in the American, allowing nearly 35 points per game. Give me Army. Over 50.5 against Tulsa today. I think the Black Knights are off to a great start and continue and will improve to 5-0.
Yeah, for me at noon, I'm with A&M and Missouri on the Missouri team total over at 23.5. I think Drink needs to get this offense rolling here, and he's in a good spot to do it. Plenty of inspiration when they nearly lost at home to Vanderbilt. Plus, coming off of a bye, we've seen him do well with that offense here. And A&M, I think, is up against the best offense they've played, at least talent-wise, so far this season. My other noon play, head-to-head with Lisi, UCLA, plus 28.5. If you look so far this season, Penn State and me, we're seeing eye to eye. You got to know when to back him. You got to know when to fade him. This is a good spot to fade this team here. Are they better than UCLA? Yes. By a lot. You better believe it. By 4 touchdowns and a hook? Come on. The UCLA Bruins, Lisi, hang around with your LSU Tigers. Hang around with Oregon.
He had the breakfast
Now
sandwich.
listen,
I
will say this. Half a sausage, egg, and cheese on a roll. I needed it during.
I fed him. So sometimes I rub his back.
It was a setup. He kind of left it late. It was hidden, right? Like he left it around. I walk in. I found the treat. I was in the trap. So I'll say this. If Penn State wins by 35, it's because I ate that sausage, egg, and cheese.
And the viewers need to understand. Last time he ate something, we were Alabama, Michigan in regards to that. So
and I've heard people at the breakfast sandwich spot listening to a certain Joe Lisi in terms of what to lay and what to not today on this opening Saturday in October. We'll say this about UCLA. Both of their covers the last 2 weeks against LSU, against Oregon, when they were getting more than 3 touchdowns, the games have stayed under. Total is 46.5 today inside Beaver Stadium, on its way up to 47 in the hook. Penn State's still the 7th best scoring defense in the country, allowing less than 12 points per game. UCLA, worst scoring offense in the Big Ten, the worst rushing offense at the power conference level. Not something I expected entering this year for Deshaun Foster. All right, Lisi guy, elsewhere around the card, what are you seeing for this Week 6 Saturday slate?
I have a lot of dogs. We'll get to those, but the two games for the sake of the graphics, I'm going to roll with the Bulldogs minus the 22.5. They've won 7 straight. Last 4 by 21 points per game. This is more about what Auburn is and what Georgia isn't right now. I know they're coming off a loss. We don't know what to expect out of Carson Beck, but they're home. I do know that that defense is legit, and Peyton Thorne and that offense are completely in disarray. That is a cause of concern for me, even though it's a rivalry game. Negative 11 in turnover margin and back-to-back SEC losses. Not a good recipe. I'm laying it with Georgia. You're basically getting a 3-point discount now, open to 24.5, down to 21.5. I'm going to roll with Michigan. Again, if you've seen Will Rogers in Miss State, back in the day, he was a human turnover machine. Hasn't thrown an interception yet. That will change tonight when he has 2 seconds to throw because the offensive line is breaking down. Danger man, outduels Will Rogers in regards to that matchup. Big Ten dogs. I really like Northwestern coming out of the bye week. I think it's very difficult for Indiana, playing with house money 5-0, looking to be undefeated, looking to be bowl eligible, but you have a team in Northwestern coming out of a bye week, methodical, blue collar, likes to run the football. I like that, catching 2 touchdowns at home. Same situation with Iowa. Again, if it's not this year with Iowa with Tim Lester and Caleb Johnson averaging 250 rushing yards per game, when's it going to be? Give me the 18.5. I think they're in this game from start to finish. This is, again, what Will Howard isn't, and in my opinion, he's not elite. He's not C.J. Stroud, not Justin Fields, and I think they force turnovers on him. He might throw an interception in regards to that matchup, and woo, pig suey. Physicality, the Hogs, I think they can run it on Tennessee. Tennessee only giving up 50 yards per game per rush, under 2 yards per carry. That changes with Jaquindon, Action Jackson. Don't be shocked if Arkansas is in the game in the fourth quarter. I like them plus the 13.5.
They have been an incredible underdog with Sam Pittman, who took the reins in Fayetteville back in 2020. The Hogs 20-9 against the spread. That's the 4th best among FBS programs around the country. The best of any team in college football, an underdog at least 20 times. And they are a perfect 3-0 against the spread as an underdog this season. Tennessee, 2nd best rushing defense in the country, only behind Ole Miss, only allowing 51 yards per game. Jaquindon Jackson last week against Texas A&M, only 37 rushing yards. Just wanted to make this point, by the way. In the 2 Big Ten favorites that you are fading today, Ohio State and Indiana, along with Ole Miss, Texas, and Tennessee, the 5 programs in the country that rank top 15 nationally in scoring, in total offense, and scoring and total defense. Indiana 5-0 for the first time in more than a half century. Any plays you want to go with here before we hit the break?
I'll do the big games because then we're going to re-rack them. But for me, I am on Alex Orji over 32.5 rushing yards, a legitimate buy low. They dropped this number week over week because he didn't run a lot against Minnesota. He will run today against Washington. And in Emeka Egbuka over 61.5 receiving yards. He is the number 1 wide receiver on this team. And while the market doesn't represent it yardage-wise, they have released total reception props for this game. Jeremiah Smith, 4.5. Emeka Egbuka, 5.5. He is wide out one on this team. He goes for 100 on Iowa.
It's very interesting seeing this Ohio State offense this year. I thought it would be more predicated on the ground. They are the only team in the country averaging more than 225 rushing yards and also more than 300 passing yards. Ohio State tied for the 3rd best scoring offense in college football, the best scoring defense. Iowa has a very tall task today to even keep it within the number at the shoe. More bets next on CFT.
Want to know who to draft and who to avoid in fantasy football? Or want to know who to place NFL season future bets on? Get an insider edge from the former NFL team doctors at Sports Injury Central. The 2024 NFL Preseason Injury Guide is the only in-depth injury report analyzing all 32 teams and over 150 players. So go to sixscore.com to get the most accurate NFL preseason injury report. That's sixscore.com.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting at the hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, guys?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take the room.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on
Let's go!
Live right here on College Football Today, we continue delivering the best bets for week number 6 in college football. We continue to break down our betting cards. I'll go quickly through my final 4 picks, everything afternoon Eastern. Army in Tulsa over 50.5 is the bet that I have for the early window. Let's talk Connecticut football, shall we? Now, an 18.5-point favorite at home today against Temple. I don't care about the spread. Give me UConn team total over 33.5 points. They're at home in Stores. They have been at home at Stores 3 times this year. They are a perfect 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread, and they have scored at least 47 points in all 3 home games. They're taking on a Temple team that is the worst scoring defense in the American at giving up more than 37 points per game. I interrupt myself because Kevin Walsh just delivered me a bit of breaking news. Not what I think you want. If you're already backed A&M, I guess if you depend on experience, Connor Wigman is going to make the start for the Aggies today. That game in about 15 minutes. It's our only top 25 tilt of this week 6 Saturday. Kev, what's your initial reaction to Wigman getting the nod over the freshman Marcel Reed?
My reaction is the fact that it feels for some like a mistake. I don't feel strongly that it is or is not. It's just knowing what the preseason notion was around Wegman and the fact that there were people today feeling that it should be Marcel Reed. It is another reason why in this game I have played a Mizzou team total because the A&M side feels completely up and down. Can I go to you, Lisi, on this as somebody who's backing Texas A&M? How much does this quarterback decision, if at all, impact how you feel about the Aggies?
Well, I think Wegman is the better passer. Reed is, even though Reed has 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, they're short to intermediate throws. You could open up the playbook. You can make the argument more with Connor Wegman maybe than you can Marcel Reed. Don't be shocked if Reed doesn't have multiple packages at specific, times in this game.
Yeah.
I want to see how healthy he is. And, again, I still lean to A&M because of the home field, because of the defense. That's why I'm making the handicap, and that's why I'm making the breakdown. But, again, I'm on the over as well. So this would benefit that, in my slight opinion, because he's more experienced.
The only full game we've seen out of Wigman was against Notre Dame. He was 12 of 30 for 100 yards and 2 interceptions. Marcel Reed hasn't thrown for more than $180 in the 3 starts that he has made the last 3 weeks, but he also hasn't thrown a pick. And I really liked my bet for this game on principle because the number felt low. We'll give you our big game best bets in just a moment. Le'Veon Moss was great on the ground with Marcel Reed. We'll see today alongside Connor Wigman.
I'll just say this. I know we got to fly through the rest of the card, but we will. The counterpoint, though, is Wegman playing Notre Dame and who Reed's been able to play against. Notre Dame's defense did project as one of the 8 or so best nationally. So, and I think the fact that they're going back to him, I like Elko as a coach. I think you do as well. Mm-hmm. I would almost say benefit of the doubt and say if he's making this move, he knows that Wegman is their better option all in all.
Yeah, listen, you would have to agree, right? And this was a guy that had preseason hype and was pretty good last year in his 3 full games before he got injured. I question it just based on what we saw. Not just a mediocre game against Notre Dame. Dreadful, awful, abysmal. Did not look like a Power 4 conference starting quarterback in my estimation. I'll talk about another quarterback here. Curtis Rourke, over 231.5. His passing yards prop today against Northwestern. He has thrown for at least 307 yards in both of the Big Ten games for IU this year. At least 3 passing touchdowns in both of the Big Ten games for Indiana. Northwestern has allowed at least 220 through the air in both of their games against power conference competition and multiple passing touchdowns. Indiana is a wagon offensively, tied for the 3rd best scoring offense this year, 48.8 points per game. They are also the only team in the country that has seen the red zone 30 times this year, the only team in the country with 25 red zone touchdowns. I think Indiana wins comfortably on the shores of Lake Michigan, 13.5 point spread. Let me go elsewhere to my betting card that we see here. Garrett Green, over 52.5 rushing yards against Oklahoma State. The worst total in rushing defense in the Big 12, allowing more than 200 yards per game on the ground. Garrett Green, 49 rushing yards in each of the last 3 games for the Mountaineers, including 17 carries for 87 yards in their last game against Kansas. 2 comparable quarterbacks that can utilize their legs against the Pokes. Taylon Green, 61 yards on the ground. Avery Johnson last week, 60 rushing yards. And then Texas Tech, Arizona, over 64.5. I think we see some points tonight in Tucson.
All right, let's rip it, folks, here. We've got Florida State catching the 15. I think they win this football game. It is Mike Norvell's Super Bowl. His job arguably on the line. On the road, Clemson, last 3 seasons, 15 road games. Only 3 times they've won by over 2 touchdowns. I'm taking the 15, obviously, but I really believe they can win this game outright. Give me Damian Martinez, over 56.5 rushing yards in the 2 games against power opponents. He has 60-plus on the ground, and this season we've seen Cal invite a lot of the rushing attack this year. Martinez was about as highly coveted as Cam Ward this portal season. They'll put him to use today in a big one on the road against Cal. I'm also tonight going to be looking for Jalen Milroe under 68.5 rushing yards. Not in his career has he gone for back-to-back games of 50-plus, coming off of the 100 sell high with that Georgia Bulldogs this season. Kyron Drones, Brady Cook against Vandy have combined 27 carries. They've been sacked a few times. 26 yards. Got to go under with that Jalen Milroe number. Got to go under Georgia and Auburn here. I don't see any way Auburn is going to be able to get over double digits in this football game, and I think the Bulldogs offensively come out a little bit slow, let down, air out of the tire with everything that they had to do to get back into that game against Alabama, 34-7, 31-7 type of football game there. We've mentioned UCLA plus 28.5. We'll do our big game picks over there. We've added San Diego State, Hawaii, over 47.5. SDSU, one of the fastest teams in college football. All Hawaii does is throw. That total should not be under 50. Over Florida UCF at 62. KJ Jefferson and the Knights need a bounce back. Graham Mertz will light up that passing defense. And then Stanford out west catching 7.5 against Va-Tech. Letdown spot after the emotional game against Miami, having to win by over a touchdown out west. No way, no how. And the sneaky sizzle, Ashton Genty, first touchdown for Boise today, plus 115.
Love that look. An off-card play out of Kevin Walsh. The betting card's good for week 6. The big game's also very good. Next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the one. Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant for that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We are just over 5 minutes away from the start of the Saturday slate in week number 6 in college football. We welcome you back to College Football Today, live right here on SportsGrid with our big game best bets. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. You are Kevin Walsh. What are you cracking up about already?
It's him. I don't know.
I don't
know what he's
You feel like you're a little far away from
I'm just thinking of something.
I'm just telling you right now, Dialgo's going.
He's asking everybody. He's walking around the studio. What do you like today? We're going to find out what you like for the big games on this first Saturday of October. And the first one starts in 5 minutes. It's our only ranked versus ranked matchup of the day. It's code number 25, Texas A&M, playing host to 9th-ranked Missouri. 2.5-point spread in favor of the Aggies. And, of course, Kev, the big news, Connor Wigman is going to get the start for Texas A&M. How do you feel about that as you are backing Missouri in this game at least to have a good offensive day?
Talking in our break, if I could maybe go back and maybe just play full over now as opposed to the Mizzou team total. I expect Missouri to get there, but I think A&M can as well. My thought is if Connor Wegman's going to be playing in this game, that means they want to throw the ball and attack the Missouri secondary more, which can just lead to more points, more opportunities. I like the over here in this game. I don't think A&M's defense has been as good as anticipated, and I think the Missouri defense has been overrated due to the softer start to their schedule. I like points. I'm keying the Mizzou 23.5.
Speaking my language, brother, because I altered it up into the 50s. I think we can get some points, but it all makes sense now. I like Texas A&M.
Oh, my gosh.
But I think we can alter this up to 6.5. I really. I think, you know what? I feel aligned. I really like the Aggies today. I think their defensive secondary could force some turnovers over Brady Cook. I believe that their secondary, again, is their strong suit.
Yeah.
Look for Moose Muhammad to break out. I know I'm against the
Moose
great.
Muhammad. All right, you're running it up.
Connor Wigman's in it, 12-30, and the only start he made against an FBS opponent against Notre Dame, 100 yards and 2 interceptions.
Makes sense.
Part of my handicap was Le'Veon Moss over 65.5. That number now north of 70 because when he played in the 3 starts with Marcel Reed, who also presents more of a rushing angle for A&M in the backfield, he had at least 90 yards on the ground. I'm a little bit more concerned about Connor Wigman getting the start. I think Marcel Reed is the more efficient quarterback there in College Station. Next up, let's go middle of the afternoon, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, inside the shoe. It's third-ranked Ohio State hosting Iowa. This number has been on the move. It's now just 17.5 in favor of the Buckeyes. You surprised me this morning when I saw Iowa as the dog on your betting card. How come?
Yeah, and I might even jump on the plus 740 as a flyer or a lottery ticket. I think Caleb Johnson, that offense, can run the football 250 in regards to yards per game. And again, we talked about it, 32 points per game with Tim Lester as the OC. I know they're still one-dimensional, but it's got to be now or never. And again, I still believe the weakness, not a knock on Ohio State, but I don't believe Will Howard's elite. I'm willing to take the shot right here, right now, especially with the potential look ahead against Oregon. Give me Iowa in regards to the points and the money line.
Both of you guys love Iowa today. Interesting. I would look towards Ohio State in this game. I am looking towards Emeka Egbuka over 61.5 receiving yards. Not just the best bet in this big game. Best bet on the card today. He is this team's number one wide receiver. Over the last 3 games, he has had more catches, yards, and targets than Jeremiah Smith. 61.5 is too low when Iowa has allowed 3 straight opposing number one wideouts at the FBS level to have the century mark against them. And Emeka Egbuka, big day.
The Hawks have been great on the ground, 4th best rushing defense in the country, but the issue has been in the back end for Iowa. This is the 6th meeting since 2009 between Ohio State and Iowa. Last one in Columbus, the Buckeyes rolled as a 29.5-point favorite, winning by 44. But the previous 4, a lot closer, including an Iowa upset back in 2017.
Brothers
in
in
3
arms.
games decided by 10 points or less. I know how thrilled you are to be brothers in arms. Let's get to the national championship game rematch under the lights on this Saturday night in Seattle. It's Washington. It's 10th-ranked Michigan. And the reigning national champs are a road underdog. Kevin Walsh, how do you see it?
Trying to make myself skinny here so they can get the pick for Lisi, baby. I can only do so
You're like
much,
a matador
boys.
like that.
Yeah, if you want him, come get him, baby. Alex Orgy, the danger man. He might throw for a 150 breakout game now. We're worried about the ground, though. 32.5 rushing, that number is light. He breaks out against the Washington defense that has not come up against a quarterback like this all year.
Eastern Michigan, Northwestern, Weber State, no good. Sweep the leg, Michigan, outright.
Washington has been a great defense, but he likes Michigan on the road. Give me Will Rogers over 227.5. The Wolverines secondary has regressed just a little bit. He is Kevin Walsh. He is Joe Lisi. I'm Ben Stevens. Week 6 starts right now.
Sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have